The stars had seen many empires rise and fall, but none as powerful as the Valtherian Empire. For 10,000 years they had ruled over 40,000 star systems. Their ships were the size of cities, their weapons could destroy entire planets, and their armies had never known defeat. Emperor Zixthalar sat on his crystal throne aboard the massive ship called Eternal Glory. The ship was so large that it had its own weather systems inside. Cities existed within its metal walls, and millions of Valtherians lived their entire lives without ever seeing the outside universe. The Emperor was not having a good day. His morning report showed that 3 more star systems had tried to rebel against his rule. The rebels had been crushed, of course, but it was still annoying. Zixthalar was 8 feet tall with purple skin and 4 arms. His species had evolved on a high-gravity world, making them incredibly strong. They thought this made them superior to all other life forms. Admiral Quentalak, the Emperor called to his military commander. What news from the Outer Rim? Admiral Quentalak was shorter than the Emperor but twice as wide. His armor was covered in medals from 1,000 victories. He had conquered more worlds than any other Valtherian in history. My Emperor, our scouts have found something interesting in a system they call Sol. The Emperor leaned forward. New discoveries always excited him, especially if they meant new worlds to conquer. Tell me more. The system has one inhabited planet called Earth. The beings there call themselves humans. They have recently discovered faster-than-light travel, but their ships are very primitive. Our scouts estimate their entire fleet could fit inside one of our dreadnoughts. Zixthalar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. How amusing. Another species of primitives who think they can explore the galaxy. What do they look like? They are bipedal, roughly 6 feet tall with only 2 arms. They appear to be very weak physically. Their lifespans are incredibly short, less than 100 years. They seem to fight among themselves constantly. The Emperor stood up from his throne. At his full height, he was truly impressive. Perfect. They sound like they will make excellent slaves. Send the 3rd exploration fleet to bring them into the Empire. Admiral Quentalak bowed. It will be done, my Emperor. Should I prepare the usual surrender demands? Of course. Give them the standard offer. Submit to the Empire and serve us or face total destruction. These humans will learn what every other species has learned. Resistance to the Empire is futile. 3 days later, the 3rd exploration fleet entered the Sol system. 2,000 massive ships appeared near Earth's moon. Each ship was over 1 kilometer long and armed with enough weapons to level a continent. The lead ship, Domination's Edge, was Admiral Quentalak's personal vessel. The humans detected them immediately. Their primitive sensors went crazy as the massive fleet appeared. On Earth, alarms began ringing in every military base and government building. Humans had dreamed of meeting alien life for centuries, but they had never imagined it would be like this. Captain Jiwan commanded the human ship Sol's Pride. It was one of humanity's newest vessels, built with their most advanced technology. Compared to the Valtherian ships, it looked like a toy boat next to an aircraft carrier. Jiwan was 35 years old with short black hair and calm eyes. She had been chosen for this mission because she was known for staying cool under pressure. Sir, her communications officer said, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. Put it on screen, Jiwan ordered. The bridge screens showed Admiral Quentalak in all his terrifying glory. His purple face filled the screen and his 4 arms were crossed over his armored chest. When he spoke, his voice was like thunder. Attention, primitive humans. I am Admiral Quentalak of the mighty Valtherian Empire. Your species has been chosen to serve the Empire. You will surrender your pathetic fleets and submit to our rule. In return, we will allow your world to continue existing. You have one of your Earth hours to respond. The transmission ended, leaving Jiwan and her crew staring at a blank screen. The bridge was completely silent for several long seconds. Well, Jiwan finally said, that was rude. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Minho, shook his head. Captain, I'm reading 2,000 enemy ships. Our sensors can barely measure their power output. Those things could destroy our entire fleet without breaking a sweat. Jiwan nodded. I know, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we have visitors and they're not very friendly. On Earth, the president called an emergency meeting. Military leaders, scientists, and diplomats gathered in the Situation Room deep beneath the capital city. The room was filled with screens showing the alien fleet hanging in space like a dark cloud. General Dongyun, the head of Earth's military forces, stood at the main display. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire career preparing for wars between humans. He had never imagined having to fight aliens. "The situation is clear," he said. "We are completely outmatched. Our entire space fleet consists of 200 ships. They have 10 times that number, and each of their ships is far more advanced than ours." President Suman rubbed her temples. She was a young leader who had hoped to be remembered for bringing peace to Earth. Instead, she might be remembered as the president who lost the planet to aliens. "What are our options?" she asked. "Honestly, Madam President, we have two choices. We can surrender and hope they treat us well, or we can fight and probably get wiped out." Dr. Yuna, the head of the space program, spoke up. "There might be a third option. Our ships may be smaller, but we've made some advances in gravity manipulation technology. We were planning to use it for faster space travel, but it might have military applications." Captain Minho's voice came through the speakers from his ship, Busan Rising. He was the commander of Earth's main battle fleet. "Madam President, whatever we decide, we need to decide quickly. The aliens' deadline is almost up." President Suman looked around the room at all the worried faces. These were the smartest and bravest people on Earth, and they all looked scared. She thought about all the humans who had died fighting for freedom throughout history. They had faced impossible odds before and sometimes won. "Send a message to the alien admiral," she said finally. "Tell him we respectfully decline his offer." General Dong Hyun's eyes went wide. "Madam President, are you sure about this?" "No," she admitted. "But I'm sure about one thing. Humans don't kneel to bullies no matter how big they are." The message was sent to Admiral Quentalak. When he received it, he stared at the screen in confusion. In 10,000 years of conquest, no species had ever refused the Empire's generous offer to become slaves. "They said what?" he asked his communications officer. "They respectfully declined, sir." Admiral Quentalak's forearms began waving in agitation. "This is impossible. They must not understand their situation. Send another message. Explain to them that we have 2,000 ships and they have 200. The second message was sent and received. The human response came back 5 minutes later. "We can count." Our answer is still no. Admiral Quentalak was now completely baffled. He had conquered hundreds of worlds. Species with fleets 10 times larger than humanity's had surrendered immediately when they saw the might of the Empire. How could these tiny humans be so stupid? He opened a communication channel to Emperor Zixthalar. "My Emperor, the humans have rejected our offer." "What? That's impossible. No one rejects the Empire." "They did, sir. Twice." The Emperor was quiet for a moment. "Very well. These humans clearly need a demonstration of our power. Destroy their moon. That should convince them of their foolishness." Admiral Quentalak smiled, showing his sharp purple teeth. "It will be my pleasure, my Emperor." He turned to his weapons officer. "Charge the planet killer cannon. Target the large moon orbiting their world. These humans are about to learn why the Empire always wins." The massive weapon began powering up, drawing energy from the ship's antimatter core. Soon, Earth's moon would be nothing but debris floating in space. Then the humans would understand that resistance was truly futile. But Admiral Quentalak had made one crucial mistake. He assumed that humans would react like every other species in the galaxy. He thought they would see his demonstration of power and immediately surrender in terror. He was about to learn that humans were unlike any species the Empire had ever encountered. When faced with impossible odds, humans didn't surrender. They got creative. Captain Hyuna was having the worst day of her life, and it was about to get much worse. She commanded the science vessel Incheon Discovery, a ship designed for research, not war. Her crew consisted mostly of scientists and engineers who had signed up to explore the universe, not fight aliens. "Captain," shouted Dr. Kangman from his sensor station. "The alien flagship is powering up some kind of massive weapon. Energy readings are off the charts." Hyuna felt her stomach drop. She had been monitoring the alien fleet since they arrived, and she knew their weapons were far more powerful than anything humans had ever built. "Where are they aiming?" "Luna, ma'am. They're targeting our moon." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The aliens were going to destroy Earth's moon as a demonstration. It was a classic intimidation tactic. Destroy something important but not essential, then threaten to do worse if demands weren't met. Hyuna grabbed her communication device. "All human ships, this is Captain Hyuna aboard Incheon Discovery. The aliens are about to fire on Luna. All ships move to defensive formation to Gyuk 7 immediately. Formation Taguk 7 was something new that human tacticians had developed. It was based on an old Korean symbol representing balance and harmony. The idea was to arrange ships in a circular pattern that could distribute energy evenly across the entire formation. No one had ever tested it in real combat, because no one had ever faced weapons this powerful. Captain Minho received the order aboard his flagship, Busan Rising. He was the commander of Earth's main battle fleet, and he had spent years training for this moment. He just never thought it would come so soon. "You heard the lady," he told his crew. "All ships, move to formation Taguk 7, and somebody get me a direct line to Dr. Yuna on Earth. We're going to need her gravity manipulation technology, and we're going to need it now." The human fleet began moving into position. 200 ships arranged themselves in a complex circular pattern around Earth and its moon. From space, it looked like a giant wheel with Earth at the center. Dr. Yuna was in her laboratory when Minho's call came through. She was a brilliant physicist who had spent her career studying gravity. Her team had developed experimental technology that could create small gravitational fields, but she had never imagined using it as a weapon. "Captain Minho, what do you need?" she asked. "Doctor, can your gravity generators create a field strong enough to deflect or absorb a planet-killing energy blast?" Yuna's eyes went wide. That's not how gravity works, Captain. Gravity affects matter, not energy. What about space-time distortion? Could you create a field that bends space around the target?" Yuna paused, her mind racing through complex equations. "Theoretically, yes. If we could create a strong enough gravitational field, we could bend space-time itself. Energy follows the curvature of space, so we might be able to redirect the blast. How strong would the field need to be? Stronger than anything we've ever created. We'd need to link all the gravity generators in the fleet and overload them simultaneously. The power requirements would be enormous." Minho nodded grimly. "Doctor, if this doesn't work, we're all dead anyway. Start uploading your calculations to the fleet's computers." Aboard the Valtherian flagship, Admiral Quentalak watched the humans arrange themselves in their strange formation. He was amused by their futile efforts. Whatever they were planning, it wouldn't matter. The Empire's planet-killer weapons had destroyed moons, planets, even small stars. No force in the galaxy could stop them. "Weapon charged and ready, Admiral," reported his weapons officer. "Fire when ready. Let these humans see the price of defying the Empire." The massive cannon unleashed its devastating blast. A beam of pure energy, containing enough power to vaporize a moon, streaked across space toward Luna. The beam was so bright that it lit up the entire solar system like a second sun. But something impossible happened. As the energy beam approached the human formation, space itself seemed to twist and bend. The beam slowed, then stopped, then began to curve back on itself. The humans had created a gravitational field so strong that it warped space-time around their fleet. "What is happening?" Admiral Quentalak roared. His science officer was frantically checking his instruments. "Sir, the humans have somehow created a localized space-time distortion. The energy from our weapon is being absorbed and redirected. That's impossible. No species in the galaxy has that technology." But even as he spoke, the redirected energy beam was racing back toward the Valtherian fleet. 3 of their massive dreadnoughts were caught in the path of their own weapon. The ships, designed to dish out devastating firepower, had no defenses against their own planet-killer technology. The 3 ships simply vanished in flashes of brilliant light. Commander Taehyun, captain of the human destroyer Daegu's Wrath, opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. He was a young officer with a reputation for being fearless and slightly crazy. His ship was one of the smallest in the human fleet, but his crew was known for their fighting spirit. "Attention, alien fleet," Taehyun said in a calm, friendly voice. "That's some interesting technology you have there. Very impressive firepower. Mind if we borrow it for a while?" The communication channel went silent. Admiral Quentalak stared at his screen in shock. In 10,000 years of conquest, no one had ever turned the Empire's own weapons against them. And now this tiny human was talking to him like they were discussing the weather. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "recommend we withdraw to a safe distance and reassess the situation." Admiral Quentalak's pride was wounded, but he wasn't stupid. His fleet had just lost 3 major warships to an enemy that shouldn't have been able to scratch their paint. Something was very wrong here. "All ships retreat to minimum safe distance. We need to understand what we're dealing with." For the first time in the Empire's history, a Valtherian fleet was retreating from a battle they had started. On Earth, people were dancing in the streets. News of the impossible victory spread around the planet in minutes. Humanity had faced the mighty Valtherian Empire and not only survived, but sent them running. President Suman was in the Situation Room, watching the alien fleet pull back to a distance of several million kilometers. General Dongyun, what's our status? All ships reporting minimal damage, Madam President. The gravity field held, and we successfully redirected their weapon. We lost some power generators from the overload, but Dr. Yuna's team is already working on repairs. And the aliens? They're keeping their distance. Our sensors show a lot of communication traffic between their ships. They seem to be trying to figure out what happened. Dr. Yuna appeared on the main screen, calling from her laboratory. She looked exhausted but excited. Madam President, I've been analyzing the data from the engagement. The aliens' weapon technology is incredibly advanced, but it has a major flaw. What kind of flaw? Their energy weapons create a specific frequency of electromagnetic radiation. Our gravity field generators operate on a different frequency, so we can manipulate the space around their energy without being affected by it. It's like we're playing music in a different key. President Suman smiled for the first time in days. Can we use this advantage? Potentially, yes, but we need to be careful. What we did today required every gravity generator in the fleet working at maximum power. We can't do it again without major modifications to our ships. Captain Jiwan's voice came through the speakers from her ship Soul's Pride. Madam President, the alien admiral is requesting another communication. Put him through. Admiral Quentilac's purple face appeared on screen again, but this time he looked much less confident. Humans, he said slowly, you have surprised us. This does not change the fact that you are vastly outnumbered. Surrender now and the Empire will show mercy. President Suman stood up and faced the screen. Admiral, let me explain something about humans. We don't like bullies. We especially don't like bullies who threaten our families. You came to our home and tried to destroy our moon. That was a mistake. You cannot fight the entire Empire. We have fleets across the galaxy. Maybe not, Suman admitted. But we can certainly fight you. And if you try to attack us again, we'll send your ships back to you one piece at a time. The communication ended. Admiral Quentilac stared at the blank screen, his forearms trembling with rage and confusion. In his entire military career, he had never encountered anything like these humans. They were weak, primitive, and vastly outnumbered, yet they spoke to him like equals. Worse, they had somehow made his own weapons work against him. It should have been impossible, but the evidence was floating in space in the form of 3 destroyed dreadnoughts. He opened a channel to Emperor Zixthalar. My Emperor, the situation has become complicated. Explain. The humans have technology we don't understand. They turned our planet-killer weapon against us. We lost 3 ships. There was a long silence. You lost ships to primitives? Yes, sir. I recommend we call for reinforcements before attempting another attack. Emperor Zixthalar's voice became cold and dangerous. Admiral, you will not retreat from a handful of primitives. You will destroy them, or I will find an admiral who can. Admiral Quentalac swallowed hard. The Emperor's threats were never empty. Understood, my Emperor. We will resume the attack immediately. News traveled fast in the galaxy, especially bad news for the Empire. Within hours of the battle at Earth, every species across 40,000 star systems knew that something impossible had happened. The mighty Valtherian Empire had been humiliated by a species that most people had never heard of. On the mining world of Krill 7, the enslaved workers stopped their digging when they heard the news. For 300 years, they had been forced to extract precious metals for the Empire. Their overseer, a cruel Valtherian named Vextalon, had always told them that resistance was impossible. The Empire is eternal, he would say while cracking his energy whip. No force in the galaxy can stand against us. But now the workers were whispering among themselves. If humans could make the Empire retreat, maybe freedom was possible after all. Kexathari was the leader of the underground resistance on Krill 7. She was a tall, blue-skinned alien with 6 arms and eyes that glowed in the dark. Her people had been enslaved for so long that most had forgotten what freedom looked like. But Kexathari remembered the old stories her grandmother had told her. Is it really true? Asked her Lieutenant Morgan. Did these humans really defeat an Imperial fleet? The reports say they destroyed 3 dreadnoughts and forced the rest to retreat, Kexathari replied. I find it hard to believe, but the news is coming from multiple sources. What do we know about these humans? Very little. They're a young species, barely developed faster than light travel. Their ships are small and their numbers are few. By all logic, they should have been wiped out in minutes. Morgan's tentacles writhed with excitement. Yet they won. How? That's what I want to find out. If humans have found a way to fight the Empire, we need to learn from them. Similar conversations were happening on thousands of worlds across the galaxy. The Zephyrian colonies, the Thaian resistance, the enslaved populations of 100 different species. All were suddenly talking about the impossible victory of the humans. On Earth, Admiral Su Yung was having the busiest week of her career. She was the head of Human Space Command, and her communications center was receiving messages from across the galaxy. Every few minutes, another alien species was trying to contact humanity. Admiral, her aide Lieutenant Jinwoo said, "We have another delegation request. This one is from the Xylorian Republic. They want to discuss a military alliance." Admiral Su Yung rubbed her tired eyes. She was a veteran military officer who had spent years planning for possible conflicts with other human nations. She had never imagined dealing with galactic politics. How many does that make today? 17, ma'am. We also have trade proposals from 23 different worlds, and 3 species offering to share their technology with us. Any word from the Valtherian fleet? They're still maintaining their distance, but our sensors show increased activity. They appear to be calling for reinforcements. Admiral Su Yung stood up and walked to the large display showing the positions of ships throughout the solar system. The human fleet was spread out in defensive positions, while the Valtherian ships hung in space like angry hornets. Jinwoo, I need you to set up a meeting with our best tactical minds.
We need to figure out what to do next. Yes, ma'am.
Who should I invite? Captain Dongwoo for sure. He's our best strategic thinker. Also Dr. Yuna, Captain Jiwon, and Commander Taehyun. If we're going to survive this, we need ideas from people who think outside the box. The meeting was held in the secure conference room deep beneath the Human Space Command headquarters. The room was designed to be completely isolated from any form of electronic surveillance. Maps of the galaxy covered the walls, showing the vast extent of the Valtherian Empire. Captain Dongwoo was the first to speak. He was a quiet man with sharp eyes who had studied military history his entire life. The situation is clear. We won one battle through surprise and superior technology, but the Empire has resources we can't match. If they bring their full force against us, we'll be overwhelmed. Dr. Yuna nodded. Our gravity manipulation technology gave us an advantage, but it's not a magic solution. The energy requirements are enormous, and we can't equip every ship with the necessary generators overnight. Commander Taehyun leaned forward. Maybe we don't need to fight them ship to ship. What if we make them think we're stronger than we actually are? Admiral Su Yung raised an eyebrow. Explain. Psychological warfare. The Empire's strength comes from their reputation for being invincible. We've already cracked that reputation. What if we build on it? Captain Jiwon spoke up. Taehyun has a point. The aliens seem genuinely shocked that we fought back. They're used to species surrendering without a fight. But how do we make them think we're stronger? Dr. Yuna asked. Dongwoo smiled for the first time since the meeting started. We lie to them. Beautifully and convincingly. He stood up and pointed to the galactic map. The Empire controls 40,000 star systems, but they can't keep fleets everywhere. Most of their strength is concentrated in key areas. What if we made them think we had fleets all across the galaxy? Admiral Su Yung began to understand. Holographic projections. Make fake fleets appear in multiple locations simultaneously. Exactly. We use our advanced AI technology to create drone ships that look like our real vessels. From a distance, the Empire won't be able to tell the difference. Dr. Yuna was already working out the technical details in her head. We'd need to coordinate the timing perfectly. The projections would have to appear in multiple star systems at the same time to be believable. Can it be done? Admiral Su Yung asked. With our current technology? Yes, but it would require most of our computer processing power. We'd essentially be running the biggest bluff in galactic history. Commander Taehyun grinned. I like it. Let's call it Operation Phantom Fleet. While the humans were planning their deception, Emperor Zixthaler was dealing with a crisis of his own. Reports were flooding in from across the Empire about increased resistance activity. Worlds that had been quiet for centuries were suddenly experiencing riots and sabotage. How bad is it? He asked his intelligence chief, Director Yul Keth. 17 worlds are reporting significant unrest, my Emperor. The resistance groups are all talking about the human victory. They see it as proof that the Empire can be defeated. Emperor Zixthaler's forearms slammed onto his throne's armrests. One minor defeat and the entire galaxy thinks we're weak. This is unacceptable. Sir, I recommend we make an example of the humans. A decisive victory would remind everyone why the Empire is feared. My thoughts exactly. Send word to Admiral Quentalak. He is to receive whatever reinforcements he needs. I want these humans crushed so thoroughly that their name becomes a warning to anyone else who thinks of resisting us. How many ships should we send? Emperor Zixthaler thought for a moment. Everything. Gather ships from every sector. I want the largest fleet in Imperial history assembled at this Sol system. When we're done with the humans, there won't be enough left of them to fill a recycling container. Director Yulketh bowed. It will be done, my Emperor. The order went out across the Empire. Ships began moving from every corner of Valtharian space toward the Sol system. Dreadnoughts that had been guarding important worlds were recalled. Battle cruisers that had been patrolling trade routes were redirected. Even the Emperor's personal guard fleet was mobilized. On distant worlds, resistance leaders watched the Imperial fleets depart and realized they had an opportunity. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's military was concentrated in one place, leaving their occupied worlds vulnerable. Back on Earth, Dr. Yuna's team was working around the clock to prepare Operation Phantom Fleet. They had to create holographic projectors that could fool the Empire's advanced sensors, while also building real gravity field generators to defend Earth. How's the progress? Admiral Suyong asked during one of her daily visits to the laboratory. We're making good progress, Dr. Yuna replied. The holographic ships are ready, and we've identified 37 star systems where we can project them simultaneously. The timing will be crucial, though. We'll only have one chance to make this work. What about our real defenses? That's the bad news. We've managed to build gravity generators for about half our fleet. The others will have to rely on conventional weapons, which won't be very effective against Imperial technology. Admiral Suyong nodded grimly. Half is better than none. What about the reports of Imperial reinforcements? Our long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout Valtharian space. They're gathering ships from every sector. Intelligence estimates suggest they're assembling over 500,000 vessels. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 500,000 ships against 200. Even with their technological advantages, the odds were impossible. Admiral, Lieutenant Jinwoo said as he entered the laboratory, we're receiving priority communications from multiple resistance groups across the galaxy. They want to coordinate their activities with our defensive plans. Admiral Suyong looked at the young officer. What kind of coordination? They're offering to attack Imperial supply lines and communication networks while the Empire's fleet is focused on us. Basically, they want to use our battle as a distraction to launch galaxy-wide revolts. Dr. Yuna whistled softly. The Great Armada was a sight that no living being had ever seen before. 500,000 ships stretched across space in a formation so vast that it took light several minutes to travel from one end to the other. The fleet was so massive that its combined gravitational pull was affecting the orbits of nearby asteroids. Emperor Zixthaler stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Infinite Dominion. The ship was 10 times larger than his old vessel, built specifically for this campaign. It contained enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems, and its armor could withstand the explosion of a star. Magnificent, isn't it? He said to Admiral Quentalak, who had been demoted but allowed to remain as a tactical advisor. This fleet represents the combined might of 10,000 years of conquest. No force in the universe can stand against it. Admiral Quentalak nodded, but his expression was troubled. My Emperor, our intelligence reports suggest the humans have been busy since our last encounter. There are rumors of advanced weapons and new defensive technologies. Rumors, Emperor Zixthaler scoffed. Let them have their toys. Numbers are what matter in war, and we have numbers these humans cannot comprehend. What neither of them knew was that their massive fleet was already causing problems across the galaxy. The gravitational effects of so many ships in one place were disrupting space-time itself. Trade routes were becoming unstable, and several planets were experiencing unusual tidal effects. On the Etherian homeworld, the Council of Elders was holding an emergency session. The Etherians were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, and they had remained neutral in most conflicts. They were wise beings who looked like floating jellyfish made of pure energy. Elder Velthara, the Council's leader, pulsed with worried light. The situation has become critical. The Valtherian Great Armada is destabilizing space-time across 17 sectors. If they engage in battle, the gravitational disruptions could affect every world in this arm of the galaxy. Elder Mordeth's energy field flickered with concern. The humans are brave, but they cannot possibly survive against such overwhelming force. When they are destroyed, the Valtherians will return to their usual activities and stability will be restored. Will it? Velthera asked. Reports indicate that resistance movements are active on thousands of worlds. If the humans fall, the Empire will face the largest rebellion in galactic history. The resulting conflicts could destabilize the entire galaxy. Elder Kesanoth, the youngest member of the Council, brightened with an idea. Perhaps we should contact both sides and offer to mediate a peaceful solution. The council chamber fell silent. For millions of years, the Etherians had maintained strict neutrality. They had never interfered in the conflicts of younger species. That would be unprecedented, Elder Mordeth said slowly. So is the current situation, Velthara replied. Send messages to both the Emperor and the human leaders. Offer to host peace talks on our neutral world. The messages were sent, but the responses were predictable. Emperor Zixthaler refused to negotiate with primitives, while the humans politely declined, stating they didn't trust the Empire to honor any agreement. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Jihoon was coordinating the largest military operation in human history. He was a strategic genius who had studied every major battle fought in human history. Now he was planning a defense against odds that no human general had ever faced. Status report, he said to his staff officers. Captain Sunwoo, his intelligence chief, spoke first. Our stealth ships have confirmed the size of the approaching fleet. 500,000 vessels, including super dreadnoughts we've never seen before. Their flagship alone is larger than our entire space navy. Dr. Yuna appeared on the communications screen from her laboratory. General, I have some disturbing news about the gravitational effects of such a large fleet. Go ahead. Doctor, computer models show that if the Great Armada engages our forces near Earth, the gravitational disruptions could destabilize our solar system. The moon's orbit could be affected, and there's a possibility of triggering solar flares. General Jihoon felt a chill run down his spine. How bad could it get? Worst-case scenario? The battle itself could make Earth uninhabitable regardless of who wins. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just fighting for freedom anymore. They were fighting to prevent their own planet from being destroyed by the side effects of the battle. Is there any way to minimize the gravitational effects? Jihoon asked. We'd need to draw the battle away from Earth and our sun. Fight them in open space where the gravitational disruptions won't affect planetary bodies. Ambassador Nari, Earth's chief diplomat, had spent the past week trying to convince other species to intervene. She was a patient woman who believed that most conflicts could be resolved through conversation. But she was quickly learning that the galaxy operated by different rules than Earth's diplomatic community. Any luck with the neutral worlds? General Jihoon asked her. Some species are sympathetic, but none want to risk the Empire's anger. The Thians offered to provide medical supplies for our wounded, and the Zephyrians said they would accept human refugees if we want to evacuate civilians. What about military support? Nothing substantial. A few small species offered symbolic assistance, maybe a dozen ships total. Everyone else is either too afraid or too far away to help. Captain Sunwoo cleared his throat. General, there is one piece of good news. Our intelligence network reports that resistance movements across the galaxy are preparing major operations to coincide with the battle. If we can hold out long enough, they might create enough chaos to force the Empire to recall some of their ships. General Jihoon studied the tactical displays showing the approaching armada. How long do we need to hold out? At least 12 hours for the closest resistance groups to complete their operations. 24 hours would be better. 24 hours against 500,000 ships. Jihoon shook his head. We'll need a miracle. Dr. Yuna's voice came through the speakers again. General, there might be another option. I've been analyzing the captured Valtherian technology from their destroyed ships. What did you find? Their ships are all connected through a massive power-sharing network. It's how they can coordinate the movements of such a huge fleet, but it's also a potential weakness. Explain. If we could disrupt the network at exactly the right moment, we might be able to cause a cascade failure. The power distribution system would overload, leaving most of their ships temporarily powerless. General Jihoon leaned forward. Temporarily? How temporarily? Maybe an hour, possibly 2. Long enough for our gravity weapons to be effective against them. What would it take to disrupt their network? We'd need to get close to their mobile command ships, the ones that coordinate the power distribution. Very close. And we'd need to time it perfectly when their power usage is at its peak. Captain Sunwoo whistled softly. That's essentially a suicide mission. Those command ships will be in the center of their formation, protected by thousands of other vessels. It's better than trying to fight them straight up, Ji-hoon said grimly. What else do we need to know? Dr. Yuna's image flickered as she checked her data. The power network has 3 main nodes. We'd need to hit all 3 simultaneously to cause a cascade failure. Miss even one and the system will compensate. So we need 3 ships to get through their entire fleet and attack their most heavily defended targets at exactly the same time. That's correct, Ambassador Nari spoke up. General, I've received an interesting communication from the resistance movements. They're asking if we need any specific targets hit during their operations. Ji-hoon thought for a moment. Ask them to focus on Imperial communication relays and supply depots. If we can blind and starve the Great Armada even temporarily, it might give us the edge we need. I'll send that message immediately. As the meeting broke up, each officer returned to their duties with a heavy heart. They were about to attempt something that had never been tried in galactic history. A coordinated rebellion across thousands of worlds. Time to coincide with humanity's desperate last stand. In the outer solar system, Admiral Su-young stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the approaching mass of enemy ships through her view screen. The Great Armada was still days away, but she could already see them with the naked eye. A dark cloud against the stars that seemed to swallow light itself. Admiral, her communications officer said, we're receiving a priority message from the resistance coordinates on Krill 7. Put it through. The screen showed Kexathari, the blue-skinned resistance leader. Her 6 arms were crossed in what humans had learned was a gesture of determination among her people. Admiral Su-young, the resistance forces are in position across the galaxy. We await your signal to begin operations. Understood, Kexathari. Remember, timing is everything. Wait for our signal, then hit them with everything you have. We will not fail you, humans. Your courage has inspired the entire galaxy. Today we fight not just for our individual worlds, but for the freedom of every thinking being. The communication ended, leaving Admiral Su-young alone with her thoughts. In less than 72 hours, the largest battle in galactic history would begin. The outcome would determine whether freedom could exist in a universe dominated by tyranny. The Battle of Proxima began exactly as Emperor Zixthalar expected. His Great Armada approached the Proxima Centauri system in perfect formation. 500,000 ships moving like a single organism. The humans had positioned their pathetic fleet of 2,000 ships between the Armada and Earth, like ants trying to stop a stampede. This is almost sad, the Emperor said to his tactical officers. They must know they cannot win. Why do they persist in this futile gesture? Admiral Quentalak, watching from his reduced position, felt less confident. My Emperor, the humans have surprised us before. Perhaps we should be cautious. Cautious? The Emperor's forearms waved dismissively. We outnumber them 250 to 1. Their entire fleet could fit inside my flagship's docking bay. There is nothing they can do to threaten us. But as the 2 fleets closed the distance between them, something strange was happening on the human communication channels. Instead of the grim determination or desperate fear that every other species showed before their final battle, the humans were laughing. Captain Kyung-min commanded the assault carrier Gwangju Storm, one of humanity's newest ships. Her crew had trained for this moment for months, but as they approached certain death, they weren't thinking about heroic sacrifices or noble causes. They were thinking about the absurdity of their situation. Hey, Admiral Su-young, Kyung-min said over the fleet communication channel. Remember that time at the academy when you said we might have to take on the entire galaxy someday? I thought you were joking. Admiral Su-young's voice came back with a chuckle. Turns out the joke was on me. At least the odds are better than that poker game last week when Huna cleaned everyone out with a pair of 2s. Commander Bo-young, captain of the heavy cruiser Jeonju Thunder, joined the conversation. Speaking of odds, I've got a bet running on how many alien ships we can take out before they figure out what we're doing. Current pool is at 1,500 credits. The Valtherian communication officers were monitoring human channels and translating the conversations for their commanders. Admiral Quentalak stared at the reports in confusion. They're making jokes? He asked his communications specialist. Yes, sir. They appear to be discussing gambling, past academy experiences, and something called poker. They don't seem concerned about the battle. Emperor Zixthaler reviewed the translations himself. This must be some kind of psychological trick. No species faces annihilation with humor. They're trying to appear brave to boost morale. But as the battle began, it became clear that the humans weren't pretending. They really were enjoying themselves. Lieutenant Dohyun piloted a small fighter craft called Busan Lightning. His mission was to get close to the Valtherian command ships and plant disruption devices on their power network nodes. It was supposed to be a suicide mission, but Dohyun had always loved dangerous flying. As he dove through a formation of massive enemy dreadnoughts, dodging energy blasts that could vaporize his ship, his voice came over the radio. This is just like that video game I used to play, except the graphics are better and if I lose I actually die. He performed an impossible maneuver, using a nearby gas giant's gravity to slingshot himself around 3 enemy ships and plant his disruption device on the first command node. Target 1 complete. Did you see that move? I've been wanting to try that since flight school. The Valtherian gunners couldn't believe what they were seeing. The tiny human ship should have been destroyed dozens of times, but its pilot was flying like the laws of physics were suggestions rather than rules. Captain Minji commanded the destroyer Ulsan Courage. Her mission was to target the second command node, which meant flying directly through the heart of the enemy fleet. As enemy fire surrounded her ship like a deadly light show, she opened a channel to her crew. Attention everyone, this is your captain speaking. We're about to attempt something that no sane person would ever try. Fortunately, sanity is overrated. All hands prepare for the most spectacular fireworks display in galactic history. Her ship dove into the enemy formation, weapons blazing. Every shot from her cannons was perfectly aimed, taking out critical systems on ship after ship. When a massive Valtherian battleship tried to ram her, she used her gravity generators to create a localized black hole that swallowed the attacking vessel. Did everyone see that? She broadcasted to the fleet. I just made a battleship disappear. Physics is amazing. The third command node was the most heavily defended, sitting right next to Emperor Zixthaler's flagship. Commander Wujin volunteered for this mission in his ship Incheon Rising. As he approached the massive enemy formation, he realized he was about to die, and the thought made him laugh out loud. You know what's funny? He said over the radio. My grandmother always said I'd never amount to anything because I spent too much time playing space combat games. I really hope she's watching this. Emperor Zixthaler was getting increasingly frustrated as he watched the battle unfold. The humans were vastly outnumbered and outgunned, but they were fighting like they were having the time of their lives. Every impossible maneuver, every successful strike against overwhelming odds, every moment they survived was met with cheers and laughter across their fleet. Why are they laughing? He demanded. They're dying. Their ships are being destroyed. How can they find this amusing? Admiral Quentelak was beginning to understand something that the Emperor didn't. My Emperor, I don't think they're laughing at the battle. I think they're laughing at us. What do you mean? Think about it, sir. We brought 500,000 ships to crush 2,000. We gathered the largest military force in galactic history to defeat a species that learned to fly between stars less than a century ago. From their perspective, we look ridiculous. The Emperor's face turned a deeper shade of purple. Ridiculous? We are the mighty Valtherian Empire. But even as he spoke, the human plan was working. All 3 disruption devices had been planted on the power network nodes. Dr. Yuna's voice came over Admiral Su Young's personal communicator from her ship, Soul's Honor. Admiral, all devices are in position. Activating cascade failure in 3, 2, 1. The effect was immediate and devastating. The power network that connected all 500,000 Valtherian ships suddenly overloaded. Ship after ship went dark as their power systems failed. The massive fleet that had seemed invincible moments before was now drifting helplessly in space. Captain Taehyun's voice came over the radio with obvious delight. Well, would you look at that? 500,000 ships and they forgot to install backup power systems. That's what I call poor engineering. Emperor Zixthaler watched in horror as his great armada became a great liability. Without power, his ships couldn't move, couldn't fight, and couldn't even maintain life support for more than a few hours. Impossible, he roared. How did they know about our power network? Admiral Suyong's image appeared on his main screen. She was smiling, which somehow made her more terrifying than any threat could have been. "Your Majesty," she said politely, "we humans have a saying, pride goes before a fall. You assumed we were too primitive to understand your technology. That was your mistake. This changes nothing," the Emperor snarled. "Even without power, we still outnumber you." "Actually," Admiral Suyong replied, "you might want to check your communication channels. I think you'll find that your empire is having some problems at the moment." As if summoned by her words, reports began flooding in from across Valtherian space. The resistance movements had struck simultaneously, attacking communication relays, supply depots, and military installations on thousands of worlds. The Empire's communication network was in chaos, and Admiral Quintela couldn't get clear reports on anything. "Sir," his communications officer said urgently, "we're receiving distress calls from 17 sectors. Major rebellions are in progress on hundreds of worlds. Without our fleet to provide support, our garrison forces are being overwhelmed." Emperor Zixthalar realized with growing horror that he had been outmaneuvered on a galactic scale. While he had concentrated his forces for this one battle, the humans and their allies had struck everywhere else simultaneously. But the final blow to his pride came when he noticed something else about the human communications. Even now, with victory in their grasp, they were still laughing. Commander Boyoung's voice came over the radio. "Hey, does anyone know how to restart 500,000 alien spaceships? I feel kind of bad leaving them floating out here." Captain Kyungmin replied, "I've got the manual somewhere. Step 1. Try turning them off and on again. Step 2. Call technical support." "What's the number for Valtherian technical support?" another voice asked. 1-800 Empire, came the laughing response. Even Admiral Suyong was chuckling as she opened a final communication to Emperor Zixthalar. "Your Majesty, we're prepared to discuss terms for your surrender. But first, let me ask you something. Why did you think you could conquer the galaxy through fear and intimidation?" The Emperor had no answer. For 10,000 years, fear had been the Empire's greatest weapon. No species had ever laughed at them before. "Let me explain something about humans," Admiral Suyong continued. "We don't like bullies. We especially don't like bullies who threaten our friends. And when we face something scary, our natural response isn't to run or surrender.